Everyone. Welcome to our Washington Transportation Plan update meeting for Southwest Washington. I've said this before, but if you're getting a panelist invitation, that just means that you're here representing, transportation stakeholder group, public agency, industry groups. So that's intentional. It allows you to mute, unmute, to use the chat, to see the other participants. If you're a member of the public, you'll have opportunities to contribute today as well, but we are using the Zoom webinar format, so that's why you have a little bit different functionality depending on if you're a panelist or not. So please join as a panelist if you get that link. I will first turn it over to Paula Reeves, who is with the Washington State Transportation Commission. They are our client on this project. They are leading this plan, and I'm with Cambridge Systematics, and we are supporting this effort. I also have several colleagues on the line today, who will be supporting, answering questions in the Q&A, adding links to the chat, and also helping to facilitate some of the conversation. So we've got members of Enviro Issues, our outreach partner, as well as Cambridge Systematics. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paula to kick us off this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. And thanks for being here, everyone. Thank you for your time. And next slide, please. Thank you to Matt Ransom and his team for hosting us and allowing us to and helping with outreach and allowing us to have this platform. So I have the honor of introducing the Transportation Commission before we get started with the important part of this, which is hearing from you all. For those of you not familiar with the Transportation Commission, they are an independent citizen body of 7 members that is appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. 3 of the members come from the east side of the mountains and 4 from the west. And you may recognize some of these folks. Roy Jennings, a longtime resident in the Vancouver area, Clark County area. And all of these folks have pretty amazing backgrounds in transportation, ranging from technology to transit, to ports, to aviation and engineering, and everything in between. Next slide. Their role is important to kind of mention to you all, just so you know what all they do. It's broad, and they are advisors on transportation policy and finance to the governor and legislature, and a lot of that advisement is done in the form of our annual report that they take to the House and Senate Transportation Committees and talk with them about big ideas and other policy recommendations. They serve as the state tolling authority, adopting state highway and bridge tolls and setting ferry fares for Washington state ferries. And probably the most important function is providing a public forum like this. And they also hold 11 meetings across the state throughout the year, hearing about local transportation needs and challenges and successes. And they conduct legislatively directed studies and author this 20-year state transportation plan known as Washington Transportation Plan, or WTP. This plan sets forth the guideposts for transportation decision makers and operating entities at state, regional, and local levels across all modes. So this is not a highway plan. This is a state transportation vision, and Jonathan will talk a lot more about that. A lot's changed since WTP was last updated in 2018. We knew nothing of COVID at that time. And this update will support recent policy changes and new priorities set forth by the legislature in the Climate Commitment Act, the Healthy Environment for All Act, or the HEAL Act as it's known, and Move Ahead Washington. And it's important to note that Transportation Commission recognizes that Washington is facing ongoing funding challenges, growing safety needs, and unprecedented growth, especially in this region that we are talking to you all from today. Our future relies on strong and sustained collaborations between all levels of government. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jonathan to get us started.
Thank you, Paula. I left that slide in. So here's the rough agenda for today. So we've got a welcome, and I'll talk about the purpose of the meeting, how to participate, as well as we'll have a little introduction from Matt Ransom at RTC. I'll give you a very brief overview of the Washington Transportation Plan, what we're hoping to get out of the meeting. The bulk of the meeting will focus on sections 3 and 4. First, looking at statewide policy goals and priorities, and then hoping to hear from you on your region's challenges and opportunities, both short-term and long-term. So we'll be using a combination of Mentimeter polling as well as group discussion. So this is a listening session, but it's also an interactive workshop. So please be ready to contribute to either virtually through the Mentimeter polling, but also hopefully some of you are willing to speak up and share some thoughts on what you're putting in the poll. So we'll show you all about Mentimeter polling in a minute, but please be ready for that interactivity a little bit later. And then we'll wrap up with some next steps in terms of the WTP, as well as any other agency updates. If there's folks on the line that want to share kind of progress report or anything that's worth sharing with this group, we've got a good group of folks together this morning, and it's worth having some time to share those updates. So real quickly, I know you're all very familiar with Zoom, but as I've mentioned before a couple times, if you're joining us late, if you're receiving a link to join as a panelist, what that means is you'll be able to see the other participants, use the chat function, and mute and unmute. If you're joining as an attendee, you can raise your hand and still talk. You can use the Q&A, but you won't have all the functionality. So for those who are panelists or participants, can click on the participant link and rename yourself. Please do so and put your agency in your name. There's also, I'm sure you're mostly familiar with Zoom, so you can see the control panel to mute to start your video if you choose to. Members of the public or attendees can use the Q&A function, and also if you have a comment, a general comment about the plan, the process, or anything commission related, you can email transc@wstc.wa.gov. So I mentioned Mentimeter, so we're going to give this a test run. So get out your smartphone, open up a web browser. I see Matt's hand is raised. I'm going to kick it over to you after this quiz, but you want to chime in for a second?
If I could, just logistically, I'm looking at the attendee list, and I know you've asked partners to put their agency name. When I go through the attendee list, I think nearly everybody on that list I recognize as an agency or stakeholder partner. So hopefully if you're on the attendee list, you can put your name so that you can migrate to the forum here as a panelist. And I just wanted to, again, reiterate, thank you for everybody that's attended, and hopefully you can get yourself into the room so you can participate.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a list of all of you, and I think you should be getting, you may have ignored the first ping, but this is a reminder. If you get another ping, Isaiah will be going through, probably giving you multiple chances to join. But yes, the vast majority of you are from, a public agency, a stakeholder that was invited by RTC. So please accept that panelist invitation. We're not going to force you to talk, but we'd love your collaboration. Anyone on the call can enter this menti.com and enter this code 24556458. We can also put a direct link to that in the chat. Do we have Maddie on today, or is it just?
I am running the Mentimeter today.
Okay, Joe. Can you put the direct link in the chat too? And let me see, or I can do that to that poll. And we have a couple pop quiz questions. Let me pull up my version of it.
The link is now in the chat.
So the link is in the chat, and you should see the first question. It's multiple choice. In 2023, last year, there were roughly 8 million people in Washington state. How much did it increase since 2000? The population increased since 2000, and what is the expected growth by 2050?
You can join menti.com anytime throughout this workshop, this listening session. Please do, and please weigh in. We're not tracking who says what or anything. So would love your contribution and participation.
Okay, so we have some good responses so far. So yes, again, it's going to be the same Mentimeter code the whole time. We'll remind you a number of times if you get lost from this screen. So I'll give it another second. You get to see everyone's results real time, so hopefully you're not biased by everyone else. But we've got a competent group here. Most of you are getting the right answer of 2 million. Both the population was roughly 6 million back in 2000, and it's projected to grow by about the same amount to around 10 million by 2050. So if we can go to the next slide, which is currently there are about 140,000 light duty battery electric vehicles registered in Washington State. How many were there in the year 2010? Okay, 5 more seconds, and I'll show. Let's see if I can show the answers on the slide itself. Okay, so what I'm seeing is most people have selected the middle bar again, but actually it was 79. So this is a hard question.
Jonathan, are you cutting out on me?
Yeah.
About the future.
There we go.
Hey, John, you just cut out for probably 30 seconds.
Oh no, it does say my
Just
internet
repeat
connection is
the,
unstable.
Just repeat the answer.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, the answer is actually 79. So that was a tough question because these are all very low numbers, but it just shows how much has changed in the last 14 years. A huge growth in electric vehicle adoption, and we can talk again and again about how much has changed and how much is likely to change over the next 20 years. So please jump in if my internet gets spotty again. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Ransom at RTC just to welcome us and just provide a little bit of context about what's happening in your region.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And again, if you're in the attendee list, just as a reminder, because I see a couple of my staff partners, very important, Mayor Keithler, et cetera, find your way into the meeting room, hopefully, or raise your hand so that you can migrate over. So RTC region, just wanted to put a couple things on the table that is unique to RTC, have it be part of the meeting record. And next slide, please. So most of you are aware, but for the record of the meeting, RTC region, we're the designated metropolitan planning organization for Clark County, the regional transportation planning organization under state statute for Clark, Skamania, and Klickitat County. We have an interesting region in that we're also fundamentally a bi-state region. So part of our responsibilities in each of the 3 counties is to coordinate with our Oregon partners. And I think that's something that's unique about this part of the world, probably more so than any other part of the state. Similarly, Bill Fashing at CWCOG, they have a similar dynamic. But I think in our case, we have just these vital connections across the river, whether it's into the Portland side of whether it's into the Cascade Lock side or Hood River, Dalles, et cetera. So a very unique region for us. And in regard to that comment, we have some responsibilities under federal statute, specifically to do mandated coordination with our peer agency in Portland. That's Metro. They're the MPO designated for the 3 counties in the Portland area. But then while not necessarily required, our gorge partners, and we could certainly attest to this, have, while not, again, mandated, have just almost like a absolute need to coordinate with Oregon partners. And I'll give you a few examples. Next slide. Within Clark County, I think one of the big issues, 3 that I'll highlight today, within Clark County, we're in the process of updating the Clark County and city growth management plan documents. As part of that, trying to update new strategies and so forth related to implementation of House Bill 1181, some of the housing policy that was adopted in prior legislative sessions, et cetera. But in the planning world, I like to look at just what are the key variables that we're working and that really influence our efforts, and that is population, housing, and employment. And here are a few numbers. This is really the pressure that we face within the growth management planning process. We expect over the next 20 years a growth of about 190,000 population, and that's using OFM estimates. On the housing side, trying to implement some of the new housing statutes, but just fundamentally to house our population, we estimate a need in the GMA process of over 100,000 housing unit. And if you look at those numbers, it's almost like a 50% increase in housing units that we need to put on the ground within the next 20 years. And then lastly, we're planning for about 88,000 net new employment jobs. And I think if you look just sort of historically, we're gaining more employment. I think the jobs housing balance, and I hope I'm correct in this statistic, is starting to tip a little bit in the favor of Clark County. A few more jobs per housing if you compare it to GMA cycles in the past. But these are the pressures that we face. And what's not listed here is the larger Portland metropolitan population that might be over 3 million at year 2045. It's about 2.5 now. But then also, while not statistically or order of magnitude the same in our gorge communities, the gorge communities in their own right are just growing in population. And there's that bi-state connection need that really is the cornerstone of a lot of our work. So next slide. To that end, the work that we do can't be done without bi-state relationships. This just points out a couple of the signature or vital projects or priority projects, however you characterize it, within each of the counties. Replacement of the I-5 bridge within Clark County, replacement of the Hood River White Salmon Bridge in Klickitat and Hood River County, the beginning of a seismic future resiliency study that is hoping to get off the ground within Skamania County. That's at the Bridge of the Gods. And I wanted to point out probably what is one of the most unique sets of relationships, and that is our gorge transit strategy. This is, in many respects, the personification of bi-state relationships, where individually the transit districts within the gorge, they're small, they're largely rural, but through the strategy of the Gorge TransLink Alliance, Kathy Fitzpatrick, who's the coordinator that's in this meeting, there's a new Gorge transit strategy that takes all these small little pieces, puts them together, and creates, maybe surprisingly, but unsurprisingly, just this, the sum of all the parts together has really created this unique strategy, and it's bi-state. It relies on bi-state partnerships. And again, that's really a frame that I'd like to ensure the commission understands in terms of this part of the world. And then next slide. Just a quick capture. I won't read through these of some of the initiatives that RTC has underway. I'll point out that one of the things that cuts across all three of the counties is we're either currently working on or soon to be working on Safe Streets and Roads for All grants. These come through the federal bipartisan infrastructure law, and really so it helps us move in the direction of how do we create a safer system across the city, county, and state roadways within our region. I'm grateful that the feds were able to award those grants for us to cover all three counties. We hope to get Skamania and Klickitat project launched this summer or fall, and Clark County is about a third of the way into our work. So that's the RTC region. Next slide. And I just summarize by just thanking everybody that's here, thanking our partners like Identity Clark County, Ron Arp, Columbia River Economic Development Council, Jen Baker, and others that while they're really the stakeholders that help us push with legislative partners, community partners, creating a more holistic sense of perspectives across the work that we do. But core to the agency of RTC are 25 members, including a tribal nation, the Cowlitz Indian tribe. And we just are grateful for the partnerships that we have, and that's the RTC region. And I was going to invite Bill Fashing, who is the director of the Cowlitz-Wahkiakum Council of Governments, and they cover Cowlitz County and counties north of us all the way up to Thurston County. I don't know if Bill is in the room yet. He was going to make some comments. Do we see Bill? Are you here? Okay, I don't see Bill.
I don't see Bill yet.
All right.
See
Well,
Bill, yeah.
offered him the opportunity to give some contextual comments about the CWCOG region. I guess we'll move to the next part of the agenda. But thank you for the opportunity to weigh in on the WTP. And again, thank you to all of our members and partners and the work that we do together.
Thank you, Matt. I will just quickly mention that Bill Fashing and Cowlitz-Wahkiakum has offered to host a topical work session in our second phase of outreach related to this plan. So we'll be working with Bill, and you'll hear more about that soon.
Great, thank you so much, Matt. That really provides some good background and context, and really, this is the purpose of today is really to understand those regional priorities from you all, and so it's great to have some level setting from RTC, and really looking forward to the conversation and everyone's feedback. So I'll give a quick overview of the Washington Transportation Plan for any of those that this is new to. Here's sort of a schematic or just a quick image to show the Washington Transportation Planning Framework. And we've got the Washington Transportation Plan, which is the state vision. It's multimodal, it's multi-jurisdictional, it's a plan for all of Washington, for all jurisdictions and all modes of travel. And we've shown it here as an umbrella, not to signify that it's the most important plan in the state, but really to show its coverage, that those WashDOT modal plans and multimodal plans, other statewide plans, local and regional plans, many of those that Matt mentioned, as well as the recently adopted transportation plan, those are vitally important to your region, to the state, and they include some of these other elements like priority projects, implementation, data performance measure, and tracking. But the idea here is that this is a plan which the commission leads is attempting to both kind of set the overall framework for what happens in the state, but also to sort of build up from those other local plans, from the other statewide plans, and make sure it's sort of capturing all of the needs, the diverse needs throughout the state. So that's kind of the purpose of the plan. It is a policy plan. It does not have specific projects in it. It has recommendations for strategies and actions. What we're doing as a consulting team and working with Paula and the commission staff is to develop this plan. As I mentioned, it's a 20-year vision. It's going to build on the 6 statewide transportation system goals that we'll talk about in a minute, as well as previous work that's happened. The current adopted plan is the WTP 2040. There's a link to access that plan if you haven't seen it on the right of the screen. Really, there's a lot of work that's happened in the past, good work that we're going to build upon. But that plan was adopted 6 years ago. A lot of the work happened even before that, and so a lot has changed since the previous WTP was adopted. And this plan needs to be updated to address those changes. So through the course of this process, we're going to understand what's changed, the new challenges and opportunities, and develop those recommendations to address some of the kind of historic and emerging issues in the state. So we're just about 6-8 months into the process. We're in the first phase of outreach, and I'll talk a little bit about what we want to get out of the meeting today as we move forward in the process. So the different outreach phases are listed here. There's 2 primary kind of regional meeting and outreach phases. These currently, this is meeting number 3 of 6 that we're doing throughout the state. And this is really to understand from you what the future challenges and opportunities from your regional perspective. Paula mentioned topic focus meetings. These are were originally going to be part of this first round, but we're delaying them by a few months to really understand what we hear from these meetings, to start to coalesce around some of the ideas, some of the common challenges, some of the common opportunities, and start to think about what strategies might address those challenges. So we'll have topic focus meetings later in the summer. And then we'll come back with another round of these meetings in early 2025 to actually talk about the draft recommendations, draft strategies. There'll be another opportunity to contribute, to comment on the final strategies before it's presented to the commission in the end of 2025. So just to reiterate, purpose of today is to hear from you all, to really gather your feedback that's going to inform some of our recommendations. And it's a key part of this effort to inform, to engage, to hear from stakeholders as well as the general public throughout this process. So
John, may I just make a quick plug again for anyone in the attendee list who's been invited to panelists, please go ahead and accept. You will not be forced to talk, but you will be able to see certain parts of the meeting you might not see as an attendee. Thank you.
Hopefully our final plug. So yeah, you'll just be able to see the chat, that you'll be able to mute and unmute yourself. You'll be able to see the other participants. So welcome your participation, regardless of whether or not you're in that room or not. You'll be able to contribute by raising your hand and using the Mentimeter. So we're going to switch into the kind of the meat of the agenda today and talk about the state planning priorities, and then get an opportunity for you all to share your perspective on your priorities, the challenges and opportunities facing your region. It's not clicking. There we go. Oops. Excuse me. It just went way too far. Okay, so starting out with the 6 state policy goals. These are the transportation system policy goals. Many of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with these 6 goals. They were first enacted in the year 2000. They focus on economic vitality, so ensuring the transportation system promotes a prosperous economy, preservation and maintenance, to maintain and extend the life of assets, safety as well as security being vitally important for the transportation system. We have mobility in terms of both the movement of people and goods, environment and health, focusing on quality of life, focusing on the natural environment as well as human health. And then stewardship being a measure of how well the state uses its resources, given that there are finite resources. How can the resources be used efficiently to maintain the system? So these 6 goals are in statute. They're codified. They're not going anywhere. Preservation and safety have been the legislative priority of these 6 goals, and these will be a key part of the Washington Transportation Plan. And many of your local and regional plans have similar goals, I'm sure. However, there are, as I mentioned, new and emerging priorities, new policies that the legislature has enacted since the last plan. Obviously, we're still coming out of the COVID pandemic, so it's a bit of a new world since the last plan. And some of the key actions that the state has taken have been around equity with the HEAL Act that Paula mentioned, have been around climate with the Climate Commitment Act, as well as changes to the Growth Management Act in terms of climate elements. There's been guidance from the state around VMT targets, and from the federal government around GHG reporting. So a lot of different guidance and different pushes towards some of these priorities are sort of bubbling to the top. We also have the Move Ahead Washington funding package of a few years ago, providing a lot of new funding for transportation, but still a gap. And the commission, as you know, has looked at road user charge and some other ways to fill that gap. So we have our 6 goals. We have these new priorities that are coming up at a state level, and the WTP offers us an opportunity to use policy pillars as a new frame for to think about the priorities or the strategies and actions in the plan. So we can use new policy pillars. There should be quotes around those, because these are still in development. As a lens to look at the strategies in the plan. So I'll read these. You'll see these again. We'll have opportunity to comment on them in some of the Mentimeter polling. But I'll read them out loud just so you don't have to squint and read them. So sustainable funding, long-term funding solutions adequately address current and future transportation maintenance and enhancement needs. Climate and resiliency, a future transportation system that is resilient, redundant, and helps to mitigate and lessen the impacts of climate change. Connecting communities, transportation investments reconnect communities, close gaps in the network, improve access to opportunity, and improve quality of life. Equity and movement, transportation planning supports historically underrepresented communities in planning processes and outcomes. And transportation technology, the state is prepared to adapt to new transportation technology in ways that further help or that help further our policy goals. And in quotes, it should say, or it should be a comma, including safety. So we know that's come up a lot. So
Jonathan, you're skipping out on us a bit with your Wi-Fi. I just wanted to make sure that we mention that the commission sees maintenance and operations and preservation
Sure.
as separate items. Jonathan, I don't know if you heard me say that your Wi-Fi skipped out there just for a second. And I made mention of the maintenance and operations and preservation recognition.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's going on today. Maybe it's the rain. Okay, yeah, I think it's a good idea. Ryan, I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to turn my video off. So please jump in to where did I leave off, Paula?
We know you're there, and that's great. You can just start here. I think that you hit the bulk of the rundown on the policy pillars.
Okay, so sorry about that. Of course, this is the beauty and the problem with virtual environments. So what I was saying is that this is a matrix that just illustrates how the policy pillars could be connected to our existing transportation system goals. So this is not comprehensive. You can imagine a goal. There could be dots covering this entire matrix. So I'll show you an example on the next slide that really highlights how this would work in practice. But the idea here is that a certain strategy under transportation technology could meet one or all of the system goals. But that's not to say that all strategies related to transportation technology would address each of these goals. So what does this look like if we take some specific actions? These are actions from the WTP 2040. So we're revisiting these. We're going to be developing new strategies and actions. This is just an example. So if you take one action, incentivize the use of clean technology and energy efficiency in the freight sector, that's from the environment and health goal in the current WTP. That could be, we could find a home for that in transportation technology, but it would also address several of the system goals. So environment, economic vitality, stewardship, for example. You have another policy from the current WTP, work to ensure that all people have access to their daily needs with dignity and independence, regardless of their ability or income, and without discrimination based on race or other identity. So this was listed as a mobility goal in the previous plan. This could be associated with the equity pillar, and also note that it addresses several of the goals. So again, this is just an example of how we might use these policy pillars as a new lens to organize, to frame the ultimate recommendations for the plan. Okay, so we'd like to get your feedback on some of these policy pillars. So we have the Mentimeter poll again. If you still have your browser open, you can stay on the same code. If you're in the chat, you can click on that link, and otherwise you can go to menti.com and enter 24556458. So the three questions about the policy pillars. The first one is, do they generally capture the top transportation priorities in your region? So that's a simple yes, no, or partially, and you'll get a response, or you'll get an opportunity to provide some explanation on the next question. So I think that poll should be up and running. Okay, we've got 21 responses in. Anyone still answering? 22, that's great.
You can click on the link in the chat anytime during this workshop listening session and participate in the polling.
Okay, so this is great. 16 of you said yes, they generally capture the top priorities. 6 said partially. So I'd love to hear your feedback on the next question, which is, let's skip to that one. Is there anything missing from these policy pillars? What would you add or remove? So especially those who said partially, please add some notes about what's missing. Is there a top priority that that we don't have here? And even if you said yes, maybe it's not. Maybe it captures your top priorities, but there could be some other elements that need to be included in the policy pillars. Okay, we have 3 already mentioning safety. We've heard that loud and clear at the other meetings as well. Economic prosperity. Yeah, yes, we cannot assume it would be, we cannot, it cannot be assumed. Absolutely. Sorry for misstating that. Economic development, maintenance, preservation. Yeah, so a lot of these do relate to some of the transportation system goals. And so we need to figure out how we can frame the policy pillars to more clearly address the system goals. We can't leave anything out of that's not covered, or that's any of the system goals that's not being covered. So we've got a request for the Menti code again. Can someone throw that in the chat? So you can always go to menti.com and enter this code 24556458, or click that direct link that Brenda just put in the chat.
And there's also a request to show the policy pillars as well. Again, Jonathan,
Yeah, I'll hide this screen so you can see them.
Maybe give a little bit longer on this question for input, Jonathan, since people are reading the policy pillars again.
Yeah, and since Jonathan is sharing the pillars, I can read some of the responses we're getting in the Mentimeter. I see some including equity as part of implementation or an equity framework, as well as thinking about different modes. The economic development, accessibility, safety, as Jonathan mentioned, health and accessibility. Planning and funding. All right.
Okay, so
Coming
we'll
in.
have an opportunity to comment on these in a second. So I can pull these back up. We'll get I can come back to these slides. So I'll leave this open, or actually we're going to move on to one more question. And just this question is intended to not necessarily rank them, but well, it is asking you to rank them. So if you could use the drag and drop to put these in order of importance, we are not going to be ranking these policy pillars in the plan. We just want to understand what's kind of rising to the top in your region so we can kind of seed the conversation in the next round to talk about some of the challenges related to these policy pillars. So either in your web browser or your phone, you should be able to drag the policy pillars in order of importance from first to fifth. And then there's an other if there's something else that should be on the list.
I'll just note that if you didn't answer one of the questions, you may have to skip ahead. You may have to click the button to skip ahead to the next question to be on the current, to be making sure you're answering the current question.
That's correct. So if you're trying to submit something, you don't, and it says there's a little box up in the corner that says that you need to skip ahead, click that so that you get on this question, because it might still think you're on the last question.
And I know we've plugged this a few times, but if you're in the attendee and you'd like to be upgraded to a panelist, raise your hand. I know we've tried a few times on a few folks who have chosen to stay attendees, which is totally okay. But if you would like to join as a panelist, just raise your hand and we can upgrade you. Thank you.
Okay, so we have sustainable funding at the top of the list so far. Got 19 responses in. Connecting communities as number 2. Climate and resiliency and equity and movement below that. Okay, so we'll give it a couple minutes or another 30 seconds or so to get your ranked choices in. This is I think interesting. You know, sustainable funding obviously very important for any of the projects, any of the priorities, to make sure we have the resources to do the projects, to do the work. Connecting communities, this has not come up second in any of the other meetings, so I'm curious to hear what that means to you all. And then transportation technology, I think has shown up at the bottom of most of our meetings, and my suspicion is that you know, it's a tool to help address some of these challenges, but it may not be a priority in itself. So, but I'm curious to what you all have to say about this. So let's go back to the think about what you put into what could be added or removed. And does anyone want to raise their hand, provide some input on what they put and why, what's missing from the policy pillars? I know there were some around safety and equity, but what jumps out to you? I'm going to see if I can get the PDF of the responses real quick. Does anyone want to be brave and share their thoughts on what they put in there?
John, can you maximize the responses window there? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the PDF version of the responses. So just give me a second, because we can't go back to the last question. So I'll pull that up in a second while you're thinking. But if anyone remembers what they wrote in.
It looks like Jen Baker has her hand up.
Yes, go ahead, Jen.
Hi, good morning, Paula and John. Great to be a part of the call today. I had put connecting communities as a really important pillar. Right now, like a lot of counties across Washington state, we're undergoing comprehensive planning processes. And those processes originated at the county, and then the jurisdictions grapple with allocations and how to manage growth. But if the jurisdictions are uniquely focusing on growth within their borders and not also recognizing growth planning in adjacent community borders, then that can create some real challenges. And so where we are at this snapshot in time, connecting communities is really important for us. Likewise, I would say that how that pillar connects with emergency evacuation planning, given that so much of our county is bordered to the east in heavily forested land. And we know Washington State is entering into yet another drought year for many of the counties across the state.
Yeah, great points. We've got Ron Arp and then Ryan.
Yeah, Matt mentioned it early, but it's worth echoing. This area is linked with Oregon, and we cannot do anything in isolation here. We have to be mindful of the fact that we're connected to a much larger metropolitan area just to the south of us.
Yes, absolutely. We heard that loud and clear when we spoke to Matt a couple months ago. And I think it's, you know, it's interesting that a lot of Washington, apart from the Puget Sound region, a lot of the major population centers in Washington State are either on the Oregon border, or the Idaho border, or the BC border. Ryan?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to echo Jen's comments as well as Ron's. You know, yeah, obviously we need to be mindful of, you know, maintaining strong connections with our friends, our colleagues south of the river, but also, you know, we have a huge urban growth area that's in unincorporated Clark County, and you know, here in the city of Vancouver, we're doing a lot to put greater emphasis on transportation, you know, safety, mobility for all, you know, regardless of whether you're in a car, on a bike, walking, transit, whatever. We don't see as much of that emphasis in the unincorporated parts of the county. And I get it when you're out, you know, outside of the urban area, it's a lot different. But I think inside the urban area, it'd be great if we could get more consensus between the city and the county, so that as you know, as we, you know, we're constructing improvements, complete streets, working our way north towards the county boundary, but there's going to be an obvious stop where our work ends, and you know, there's not a lot of facilities for those folks to receive on the other side of that boundary, and we're having conversations with the county, and you know, trying to get them to work with us and so forth. But I think if there was broader policy guidance on that would help a lot.
Yeah, think about that for when we talk about the challenges and opportunities. I'd like to get your take and get others' take on what would that look like from a statewide plan. You know, what kind of support would you want from a plan to facilitate those sort of regional conversations? So thanks for that point. We've got Jean-Ann.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I'm not putting my video on, but I'm having low bandwidth as well. So Ryan shared a lot of what I wanted to say, but the same thing, that the communities outside of the urban growth are where we're really struggling with our services to help. And the more the urban growth is, and the more services start moving further away, specifically doctor visits going to Portland for us, the tougher it is for us to be able to keep these communities from being isolated.
Yeah, thank you. Karen?
I just wanted to add to the comments on connecting communities. One of the uniquenesses of Clark County, again, another uniqueness, is that thousands and thousands of our workers are employed across the I-5 bridge, over in Portland or surrounding areas in Oregon. And that makes it so that employment is key to this notion of connecting communities. And that's a reason why it is so important in the eyes of many.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear the kind of definition of connecting communities in this region. It's like so visceral, right? It's sort of you live it daily. I see Bill's hand up, and then I see in the chat that Song would like to speak. So why don't we go to Bill and then Song after that?
Thanks. Bill Fashing, Cowlitz-Waukiacum Council of Governments. Just would expand on that, connecting communities out of Clark County. It goes north and south. And a few years ago, when we had the major landslide on I-5, and I-5 was closed for a couple days. We closed schools because teachers couldn't get from Vancouver, Clark County locations into Cowlitz County to work. So you're sending workers both directions, not just to Portland, and we're sending workers that way. So that connected communities is very important, and maybe goes to one of the key issues I've got is I-5 parallel routes, north-south through the region. So I'll leave it at that, but just wanted to expand on the councilor's comment about interconnected in Clark County.
Thanks, Bill. Song, are you able to come online?
Yes. Sorry, I don't really have a video. I guess I don't usually put on video much, but yeah, the topic of connecting communities is super important, as I believe that the frequency of routes to suburban areas is a barrier for individuals who have employment, and as we've all seen in many cities, where as Portland spills over into Vancouver and the cost of living raises in Vancouver, the proportion of people traveling from outside to Vancouver or to Portland will inevitably increase, and so we need more frequency of travel along the I-5 corridor, and also to like Battleground and just outlying areas. And obviously it's part of Clark County and the state's logistics to figure out what that means, because really connecting communities tackles multiple pillars, and as more people are able to use that system and get educated about how that works, then there's going to be more funding and grants from the federal to make sure that the economic vitality of the region continues.
Thank you, Song. I'll give it another 30 seconds if anyone wants to raise their hand or add any comments. Yeah, Mayor David.
Yeah, so this is Dave Stevie. The comment that really resonated with me was the emergency evacuation. We had a fire, it was 1 year, maybe 2 years ago now. But we have the Slough Bridge. So I'm out there, with Camas and Washougal. I see Larry Keister on the line too. But we've got this Slough Bridge, and it goes from 4 lanes down to 2 to cross over into like the Camas, Washougal area. And, we've been working on that, trying to get funding to fix that. But, that's just one example of where we have to think about that. When we had our fire, that was really the main issue, trying to get people out and stuff. And we're just thinking of the future if we had something worse. The fire didn't come down into the cities, but if it did, that would have caused a big problem.
Yeah, that's definitely something we've heard from other regions as well. Just having redundancy in your routes, and I think that kind of evacuation planning, at least what I've heard is there's really good work that happens at a city level or a county level, but then often isn't kind of stops at the border. So I'm curious if that's in your experience as well. And I see Larry also has come on with your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mayor Stevie, for your comment. The Camas-Slough Bridge is critically important for not only intermodal freight for our district, but also for the growth that's happening in both Camas and Washougal. And the condition of the Camas-Slough Bridge is critical, because we cannot get large trucks through the surface streets of downtown Camas safely. So it's a safety issue. It's also an intermodal freight issue. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think a lot of these comments are great, and they really set up the next section of our discussion. So I think we can put a pin in a lot of this and really bring these as challenges. We've already said it once, but you can say it again in writing if you'd like to. So we're going to focus next on the challenges and opportunities facing your region. So I have a couple slides just to get us thinking about this, and then please get your thinking caps back on. Think about other challenges facing your region beyond what you've already shared. So this is a bit hokey, but just goes to show how communication has changed so much over the last 20 years, and who knows what it's going to look like 20 years from now. Around 2000, this is what a cell phone looked like. Now I'm sitting with a headset on, not that headset, but you can't see me because my technology is not working as well today. But really, just this change in technology is facilitated and sped up by the pandemic has really changed the way we work, and that's obvious to all of us today. The same graphic could be made for transportation. We could show an old sedan from 2000. We could show, a semi-autonomous vehicle today, or we could show bike share and scooters, or Ubers and Lyfts. So just thinking about the transportation system of 2000 versus today, it's so different. And what is that going to look like 20 years from now? So that's just to get you thinking about when you think about future challenges, both in the next 5 years, but also in the next 20 years. We'll do one quick pulse check, and we'll have more long answers in a minute. But if you can load your Mentimeter again, click the code or click the link in the chat, or go to menti.com and enter this code. This is a quick, how are you feeling about the future of Washington? So one, maybe 2 words to describe your thoughts about the future. I think this cautiously optimistic characterizes a lot of what we've heard in these meetings, and it sort of balances the hopeful and the concerned. There's a lot to be worried about, or there's a lot to be nervous about, because the future is unknown. There's a lot of challenges ahead, but I think you have to have some amount of hope to be in this business of planning, of long range planning. So some other complex, tough decisions, right? Financial sustainability. So a lot of good words here. And please kind of carry this forward into, I'll keep this open so you can keep adding words to it while I present a couple more slides to set up the next section. So we're going to be talking about transportation issues in your region, challenges. We did speak with Khalid, we spoke with Bill, we spoke with Matt at RTC and others, and we've looked at some of your documents, and these are some of the issues that we've seen emerging in your region, but in no order of importance. But these are some of the topics that have come up, but we definitely want to hear from you now. So some of these that have already come up today: funding, safety, maintenance, operations, as well as preservation, by state economies, right? That's come up a bunch already today. Rural and suburban mobility, resilience and redundancy. So think some more about those issues. And what we're going to be asking you is to provide some specifics on challenges and opportunities. So here's how we're defining challenges: as external forces or barriers that may prevent the state or your region from reaching the transportation goals. So one example might be the switch to zero emission vehicles or electric vehicles, reducing the gas tax revenue. That could be a challenge for future funding. There are going to be many other challenges I'm sure you can come up with. Opportunities are external forces that the state could be positioned to act upon if we implement the right strategies and actions to take advantage of those opportunities. So here's one that's very current is artificial intelligence technology making it easier to process data and address system deficiencies or improve safety. And that could also be a challenge, something to be concerned about. What we've been talking about the state or Washington interchangeably. You can put on whatever hat you'd like to if you're representing a local city and want to answer these questions locally. That's great. We'd also want to know how this plan can help you address those challenges if it's a local challenge. So we'll get into the conversation now. So the first question is what I've alluded to. In the next 20 years, what will the state's biggest transportation challenges be? So we've got that poll question up.
The link is still in the chat if you haven't joined yet and would like to answer the question.
Yep, here it is, menti.com, and there's the code. Wait, I think that might be the wrong code. Is this the right code, Brenda, to the 2451? Let me double check. I don't think we have. Yeah, I think it's the 245-6458, but just click the link in the chat or keep your browser open. So the biggest challenges so far, we've got funding coming up a couple times. We have congestion coming up a couple times. Mode shift as a challenge, maybe an opportunity, or maybe that's a challenge to get mode shift. Safety, escalating construction costs. Yep. The cost to maintain our infrastructure is outpacing. So these are getting to some of the nuance around why funding is a challenge. It's not just limited resources, things are getting more expensive. Flying cars as a challenge, okay. Airspace maybe becoming an issue. Right, here's an opportunity to pass a funding package that supports ongoing preservation needs and forward thinking. Climate change, yes, definitely a big future challenge. Funding, the bi-state connection. Aging infrastructure, aging population. So this I think came up in the regional transportation plan. So curious if folks have any comments on what that means in terms of a regional challenge and how you're thinking about that. Unrealistic climate goals. This balance of maintenance and new construction comes up a bunch. How do you, just having funding for transportation is not enough. You can't just build more without maintaining the existing system. Okay, these are some great responses. Does anyone want to come online and share what they put in here or respond to something that you see in here? Also think about which of these are maybe not the most pressing issues, but which would you say these are short-term challenges, which are more longer-term challenges? Yeah, Kate from City of Vancouver.
There we go. Thought I would jump in. I was one of those people that I think put 3 things in one box. So one of them was the escalating construction costs. So I think we're seeing that even by the time we design something, by the time it goes to bid and comes in, those costs have escalated. So I think that's probably why so many people chose sustainable funding as a top priority. So that's a challenge. I think I put the grid. We're thinking about electrification, and is the grid ready for all of the electrification that we're hoping to see transition-wise? And then I also put public travel behavior, just because of the safety issues we're seeing, speeding, distracted driving, driving under influence. And so I think that that's a big challenge as we're working on safe systems approach and putting that at the top of our design thinking. We're also seeing that it's, there's a real sort of public behavior issue and challenge that's come particularly after. So those are sort of my brain dump on that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kate. Ryan?
Yeah, I put the comment in around the cost to maintain our infrastructure is outpacing the revenues. And I shared earlier that we're doing a lot here in Vancouver to make our roads work better for all modes of travel. But those types of improvements will be a challenge to maintain going forward because our roadways are going to they're going to be a lot more complicated, but buffered bike lanes and cycle tracks and all these different things that we're implementing into our system. It'll be a greater challenge to maintain those going forward. And we're already seeing increasing cost in pavement management and other infrastructure maintenance far outpacing the increase in just baseline revenue through our through property taxes, through our transportation benefit district. And so the lack of adequate funding is really going to put us in a position where we're going to have to do less on an annual basis than what we should be doing. And that really is just going to translate into a greater degree of deferred maintenance, which leading up to when we adopted our street funding strategy in 2015, we were way behind the curve, and we're just now getting caught up, but we're going to start seeing ourselves slip if something doesn't give.
Yeah, great points. Yeah, Matt?
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to reiterate the comment. I put in electricity supply. And at the RTC, we've had some just very sort of broad and sort of directed conversations internally about, are we ready? And what is the role of Metropolitan Planning Organization? What is the role of the state for that matter? And what is largely our market response issue? Market meaning, who's going to provide the units, maybe at the supercharge units, who's going to provide, or what opportunities exist at the residential location, which most people have electrical outlet. But I think when we think about state policy and the directed mandate to move in the direction of electrification, and then when we think about some clear gaps in the market, which is what do people that live at apartment complexes do, or people that don't have access to a plug at the unit that they occupy, I suspect that there's a real gap. And a question that I struggle with just thematically is, are we ready? And are we mandating certain outcomes that the market is not delivering the supply side to, the electricity side to? So as a strategic issue, that's one that in my mind continues to roll around. What are we doing? What should we be doing? And is the market going to be ready for all these electric cars that we have to put in the field?
That's a really good point. And Matt, if you're still willing to respond, and we'll go to Song next. I think Song would like to speak, but where do you, and then maybe this is getting into opportunities, but what do you see as how can the plan help that? We heard from previous calls about including utilities more in transportation planning. Is that the first step? What are some of the other solutions, maybe or potential solutions that you see to help advance that conversation?
Well, by no means am I an expert. I know internally when we've tossed this question around, and Adam Fisk, who I see is still in the attendees list, has been delegated on the RTC team to be aware of the market and maybe look for opportunities to coordinate with a public utility district here in Clark County, et cetera, and what they're doing and what kind of planning. So I think in short summary, what you just commented on, the utility should be more involved. And one might ask the question, well, why? But if the state is moving as they have legislatively to mandating certain outcomes, and then just leave it up to the market. I mean, an example would be this last session, in the transportation supplemental budget, there was some directed resources for, I think, bus and heavy duty vehicle conversions. So that's a state response, which is we're going to give you more incentives, or we're going to give you more opportunities to convert the engines. But anytime I'm in a stakeholder forum or hear from people that are actually operating this equipment, the other side of it is, well, I don't have anything to resupply. Where's the electricity, or where's the componentry that, even if I got this massive state incentive to redo my equipment, if I can't recharge the equipment, then what's the point, right? So I think in some ways, and again, I'm no expert, but I hear these pieces of the conversation and it just raises my level of uncertainty. Are we ready? Is the market going to deliver the supply side? So that's not useful per se, but these are bits of pieces of conversation, and it just raises, like, there probably should be a more holistic, there may be, and again, I may not be familiar with it, but that's my comment at this point.
Thanks, Matt. That is helpful. We're going to go to Song, who raised their hand in the chat, and then we'll go to Ron and Leanne.
Hi again. So actually a little bit on what Matt's talking about. I mean, a similar situation that sometimes the state runs into is when, like, the federal government helps and funds the building of a bridge, but then the state ends up finding out that they don't really have enough funding to maintain the bridge. You know, it's kind of in a similar vein of, like, what does that look like? And you know, the U.S. government is a big ship, and it's hard to turn around a ship like that. And you know, can we spend time waiting for a circuit board to come in just to fix a small problem in a bus? Or is it better and more reliable to have a hybrid system, or a system that a legacy mechanic can still actually manage? Because mechanics are still mechanics, and we only can defy the laws of physics so much before we're just computerizing everything. And then if one thing breaks, well, based on quality standards and safety standards, we can't operate the bus because guess what? A dial went out on a screen. And so, you know, I mean, I get the importance of moving forward, but, you know, we want to balance out, because the fact is there's not a lot of companies that make buses. And how much of that do we want to rely on foreign countries to do for us? Because, you know, there's no, as far as I know, there's very few, or I mean, you can't really even count over 5 companies that actually make buses here. And so where's our supply of even vehicles?
Yeah, thanks for those comments. Let's go to Ron and then Leanne.
Yeah, real quick. I think modeling is going to be helpful in terms of policy. So really understanding the impact on our energy supply source, and how we anticipate creating a resilient supply. I think it might inform us on how quickly we make decisions, how realistic our policies are. For example, do we really want to blow up 4 dams before, well, we don't have enough power supply? I mean, just some basic cross-functional thinking here, I think, would be really helpful, and modeling at the state level on those various interdependencies would be helpful.
Thank you. Great comment. Leanne?
Good morning, and we just wanted to piggyback on some things Matt and Song said. Yes, you know, we do, as far as bus manufacturers, we only have 2 that are within the United States right now. So that's one of our biggest challenges with the bus issue, on top of, you know, electrification. And we are also looking at hydrogen fuel, and we're needing to have good supply of that, as well as we are pushing towards our no emissions plan. So there's a lot of questions to be answered, and supply is a huge concern for us, as far as making sure we have buses to provide the service to the community.
Yeah, great. Absolutely. Okay, I see Adam's hand as well. I'm gonna allow you to talk. So you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hey, thanks. Sorry, I was just trying to join as a panelist.
Oh, okay. Isaiah, will you upgrade Adam to a panelist? All right. Any other quick comments on what you've seen here?
John, we have a comment in the chat from Jen. I can't see their entire name, unfortunately, but Washington State has transitioned from being a net power exporter to a net power importer in the last 7 years. And this is a huge variable to navigate because it makes us reliant more on external market prices during a time when the goals for cleaner energy create a filter on the types of power we can buy. And Jen, I don't know if you want to speak up, but that was a great comment. Jen Baker.
Oh, thanks. I just thought I would sneak that in there to kind of piggyback on top of the electrification considerations. But for decades and decades, one of our value propositions has been access to affordable, reliable power. And that's from a business standpoint as well as infrastructure creation standpoint. And so now that we're in a position where we're importing electricity and competing with 11 Western states on how we gain that electricity with the rules that Washington State has put forth for us, I think we can't understate those sort of the effects of those parameters and the cost.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Okay, we're going to move on to opportunities. So keep these challenges in mind, start thinking about solutions or potential solutions or potential opportunities, and we can come back to these challenges as well. So let's move on to the next question, which is, you might have guessed it. In the next 20 years, what will be the state's biggest transportation opportunities? So keep your Mentimeter poll active. If you need to advance to the next question, if it prompts you to, please do so.
Jonathan, I'm just going to comment quickly while folks are filling this out. In the past 2 meetings we've held, I made this comment about this time in the discussion, and it was fruitful. So I'm going to try it again. I think over the past 20 years in my transportation career, I've seen that jurisdictions had at least adequate funding to pursue their transportation priorities independently. And I think we're moving into a new day in transportation where we seldom see a transportation project done solely by one entity. And this idea of collaboration and partnership is seemingly indispensable. And I noticed it in a number of the comments on challenges. So I just wanted to put that out there. We heard in the past 2 meetings, partnerships in the utility arena, partnerships with school districts, and partnerships among jurisdictions, state, regional, local, and others. So just pointing that out.
Thanks, Paula. So location as an opportunity. I like that. I'm wondering if this is the region or if this is the state. You know, connecting people. I like the. I'm just thinking about sort of a lot of what we heard in the challenges, connecting communities, this interconnected region that you have, and its connection to this connection, and it's sort of the redundancy, resiliency, connectedness is so important to this region, and I think that those are all vitally intertwined. State policy and clear mandates as an opportunity. Yes, it's a challenge. They could be unfunded, they could be too aspirational, but it's also an opportunity. technology to cut greenhouse gas emissions and improve multimodal opportunities, federal policy and state policy alignment as an opportunity. Here's an interesting one. Rising interest rates actually slowing suburban development. So it's sort of the double-edged sword of kind of the economic burden could slow development and actually do some good maybe. Opportunity to transition to a mileage tax. So that's a funding opportunity. Technologies to improve bridge lifespan. So technology is just not mobility, but also for preservation and maintenance. I really like that. Creatively implementing multimodal level of service. I'd love whoever put that in to maybe share some ideas on how to implement that and what creative options there are. I don't know anything about this ConMet technology, so I'd love to hear more about that. High-speed rail, the first time high-speed rail has come up in our 3 conversations. I'm sort of surprised. We also heard about just expanding Amtrak Cascade service as a quick win. Electrify railroads, yeah. Okay, these are great. Does anyone? We'll keep this open for a little while, but I'm doing a lot of talking. Does anyone want to chime in on what you put in here, what you've seen in this come through from others? Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, just quick sort of my personal reaction to high-speed rail. Thematically, this is like an idea the state and Oregon and California, we've been working on this, and it's just like almost this idea that's far off into the future. And the more I'm seeing projects get announced, for example, this last week or earlier this week, the Los Angeles to Las Vegas, and then similar, although maybe not as high speed, routes from Orlando to Miami, and then those in the Northeast corridor. It's starting to break down the mental barrier, maybe the funding philosophical barrier that some of us may have, which is, oh, this really is within striking distance. So within the next 20 years, I think the probability that is actually a proposal through the Cascadia corridor, recognizing that there's a lot of work that's been done in pre-development, it becomes, I think, whether it's in the policy world or in the public side, more likely or more realistic. So I think that's I think we're breaking down the barrier for that idea through some of these projects that are getting underway.
Thanks, Matt. I'll just mention that the Washington State Transportation Commission is meeting in September with their counterparts in Oregon and California down in Fresno to talk about high-speed rail and that high-speed rail hub. And the West Coast Network Scoping Study is part of this WTP, and the 3 states will be talking about, resilience in the context of transportation.
Thanks, Paula and Matt. We'll go to Bill, and then we've got Gordon after that.
I'm not sure if this is an opportunity or not, but I put down the new sources of electrical generation. We've got some grandiose ideas on electric, and if we don't get more sources of generation that are viable, we're not going to get there. Someone mentioned tearing out dams and such. Even if we leave all the dams in and we do everything else that is on the books, we're not going to have enough electricity to power this state in 20 years unless growth stops. So what are we going to do? And so I guess the opportunity there is new jobs, new opportunity, and coming up with hydrogen cells or whatever it's going to be. But we can't blindly move forward saying we're going to electrify everything, knowing that we can't get there. And until Seattle starts putting wind turbines on top of their buildings and on their hills, we're not, and sorry, that's a cynical view on big city people wanting those resources out in rural areas where they don't have to see it. But anyway, we need to find a way to overcome that. Sorry, I'm rambling. I'll stop.
No, that's point well made. We're gonna go to Gordon on the line and then to Mayor Stevie. Gordon, you should be able to unmute now.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this very interesting forum. First, a comment to Bill and others. We do have challenges about where we're going to find our next increments of energy, but transportation electrification is not quite as dire a challenge as people paint it to be, mainly because most vehicles are going to recharge overnight. We have a run-of-the-river system with BPA runs, and that means that except for Gray and Cooley, there's very little storage. So water going down the river is going to go down the river. It creates problems where there's too much spill and there's dissolved gas level problems. And the solution is generation. So charging vehicles is a solution for that. Also, most of our wind resources are principally nocturnal. The wind blows better at night than during the day. Also, the grid constraint, the majority of the utilization factors for the grid, especially at night, are really low. So we're not going to have to build a lot of infrastructure for people to be able to recharge their EVs overnight. Second, to the opportunities, not only I'm really heartened to hear that we're emphasizing high-speed rail for the I-5 corridor, but for 20 years out, hopefully we're going to revive the old daylight run that ran east-west across Washington State. Being able to tie Spokane with the Seattle and the Vancouver economies will not only be, and all points in between the west side and the east side, it's not only a great commercial opportunity, but it's a remarkable opportunity for us to tie our state together. Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon.
Thank you, Gordon. Yeah, we heard from others at previous calls about the kind of the benefits of electric vehicles as sort of battery sources and sort of the vehicle to grid actually doing some load balancing. So I think that's a really good point. Appreciate that. Let's go to Mayor Stevie.
Hey, I just wanted to make a comment about how important I think it is that we collaborate. We collaborate and see what other countries are doing. You know, Americans, we don't want to give up our individual cars, and I get that. But it's we look at what, you know, I do a lot of traveling, so I see what Australia's doing, I see what Japan's doing, what Korea's doing, and you know what Europe's doing. And I think it's important that we don't try and take this on alone, that we collaborate and try and get best practices. And that's something I think that we can maybe look and see what other people are doing and maybe just get ideas and not try and take this all on ourselves. So I just want to throw that out.
Thank you. It's a great comment. Yeah, Daniel.
Yeah, I was listening last night to the April meeting of the RTC Board of Directors, and one of the subjects came up with the Safe Streets and Roads for All initiative, and one of the components in there was driver education, but nothing was there wasn't anything expanded on it. It struck me for some years that we have continuing education requirements for many professions in medicine, in law, in my industry was appraising and many others. But we don't require any continuing education for people to renew their driver's licenses. And the laws and rules change, the technologies change over the years too. We may find that during certain periods of time, we have a high incidence of certain types of collisions or mishaps that cause serious bodily injury or even deaths. And through, if we implement a continuing education program through the licensing department, perhaps we can get the word out to some of the drivers. Here's some new things you need to know about. Here are some concerns, and have them pass a test after reading some of the educational material. Just, I thought I'd throw that out there as a thought.
That's a great point. I naively thought that, you know, driverless vehicles were going to solve all our problems, but they haven't rolled it out as quickly as the transportation experts thought. And so I think driver education, as we've seen over the last few years with the pandemic and the rise in fatalities and risky driving behavior is definitely important.
And it's not just the drivers. There needs to be some education of bicyclists and pedestrians and so forth, how they can best and most safely utilize the system. Continuing education for drivers might spill over because many bicyclists are also licensed drivers of vehicles. Many of the pedestrians out there have driver's license as well, but so maybe there's some spillover there, but I'm not sure that's going to completely fill the bill for pedestrians and bicyclists. Just a thought.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, I cut out again, I think. I was starting to say, does anyone want to comment on kind of the challenges of multimodal level of service? Whoever put this comment in here, or maybe the opportunity there? Mayor Stubbe, you still have your hand raised, but I'm assuming that's an old hand. Please jump in if not.
That's an old hand. Thank you.
Okay.
Has the state, this is Song, by the way, has the state ever, or at least maybe just within certain counties, ever considered partnering with rideshare as a way of fulfilling some obligations of alternative transportation, as we're running into individuals preferring that in terms of potential safety and or just it's easier, you know, like in terms of, like, I ride the buses all the time. I'm actually blind, and to be honest, to a hospital or a medical area, I would rather use alternative transportation because I don't really want to get lost in there, because it's too much of a burden on medical staff to be like, this blind person doesn't know where he's supposed to go, or you know, he just knows where he needs to go, but he doesn't know what building it is, right? And so it's easier to have alternative transportation to just get you to the right facility at the door, so that you're not burdening anybody else with finding your way, because they're already busy enough with other people, right? So it's just a thought about how that possibly could work as a multi-mode to cover stuff like that, because only so many vehicles have wheelchair accessible lifts, and so many vehicles just available, because those are still retrofitted vehicles after all.
Yeah, that's a great point. And thank you so much for joining today and providing your perspective. I feel embarrassed now that I'm worried about the accessibility of this meeting. So I'd love your thoughts after the fact about how your experience was today. I know sometimes Zoom has sort of built in closed captioning or maybe there's some audio version of it to sort of produce what's on the screen. So I'd love to offline, maybe you could send me your thoughts on how the meeting went today from your perspective, and I'm glad you're able to utilize the chat to raise your hand and speak. To answer your question, and I'd put it out to the group because I'm certainly not an expert on all things Washington. I know there are other states and other, primarily at the city level, that have partnered with rideshare to subsidize some often like first last mile access to transit. So they'll partner with Uber or Lyft and have a subsidized route to get to a major transit mobility hub or transit center. Has been pretty common in California cities. I know City of Bellevue has a pilot going with I think it's actually like a neighborhood electric vehicle, or a little, I don't think it's Uber or Lyft, but it's a kind of an on-demand type shuttle for the downtown area to encourage people to not drive or drink and drive as they're going about their evenings in downtown Bellevue. So there are examples. I know a lot of transit agencies are looking at, micro transit, which is, a fancy way of saying on-demand transit rideshare as a way to serve areas where fixed route maybe doesn't make as much sense. But I think the case studies I've seen has been, the cost effectiveness of it is always in question. And so curious if anyone else who has experience with or knows about any examples from Washington State where cities or regions have partnered with ride sharing as a mobility option. Well, Song, I appreciate your comments. Anyone else want to expand on what they've put in the opportunities or challenges? I'm also curious if there are, if any of these you see as really short-term wins, things that the state should really prioritize in the next several years. Please raise your hand and make that point known. Yes, Ron?
I know it's a minor thing, but potholes and surface material are great reliefs when driving. And some of the excellent work that WashDOT has done in the last year or two have not gone unnoticed. And there are places where you have gaping potholes, and those do go noticed. I would point out that in our neighboring community to the south, there's a $3.6 million lawsuit that made the news over somebody who was injured over hitting a pothole. So I don't hope that becomes our next liability fund for all things, but it's worth noting that this is happening. And so if you want something quick and visible, I'll tell you, nothing does it better than a nice resurfaced road or getting potholes fixed.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even from the cyclist perspective, even if you don't have a bike lane, a nice smooth road is a great improvement to the bike experience.
I noticed the transition to mileage tax was brought up, and there also in challenges there was a comment about that related to sustainable funding. Did anybody want to elaborate on thoughts there? I see Ron.
I didn't put the
Brian.
comment in, but I'll chime in. This has been an issue that we in the transportation world have been seeing for many years now as cars become more efficient, as there's a greater emphasis on, zero emission vehicles, are the revenues from the gas tax are just, they're just, going way down. And obviously, again, not keeping pace with inflation. And so I know a lot of states are experimenting with a mileage, a per mile type tax. I know Oregon has experimented with it. I don't believe Washington has done anything with that.
The Transportation Commission's actually been studying this for a decade with
Yeah.
over 2,000 actual drivers.
So I think that's a direction that we need to consider. As someone else on the line today said, we're pretty in love with our cars. So even if we all switch to to EVs, we're still going to have cars. We're still going to have a lot of cars on the road, and that's still a primary way to help support our the revenues we need to support just maintaining what we have, let alone improving. So I think that's a major issue we need to be thinking about.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. Let's go to Bill Fashing, and then we got a few hands up. So we'll go Bill, Daniel, and then we'll go to Gordon on the line. So go ahead, Bill.
Just on the whole funding issue, I just would like to remind people to remember that whatever alternative funding sources we may move to in the future, we're going to be asking people for more money to maintain more lanes, more bridges, more everything. So I have heard many people say that it's a balancing act, and we're not asking for more money with these new programs, but in reality, we're going to have to in order to fund what we need to have funded. So just a caution to policymakers not to promise something we can't keep as far as alternative funding sources, not pulling more money out of everyone's pockets. So my realist or cynical perspective on that issue.
Thank you. Okay, Daniel.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Ryan's statement about costs. As we're transitioning from gasoline-powered vehicles to hybrids and electric vehicles, you should note that the electric vehicles weigh considerably more than the internal combustion vehicles that they're replacing. I test drove one of the Tesla Model 3s some time ago and noted its weight at 5,600 pounds was more than twice the weight of my old Acura Integra. And certainly the added weight of the electric vehicles is going to place some burden on maintenance as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go to Gordon real quickly, and then Adam Fiss. So are you there, Gordon?
I am. So I did enjoy reading the forward drive report that was issued last week. I have a lot of issues with it, and I would like an opportunity really to discuss that at length. But just at a high level, I think this grew out of the original dongle solution that was proposed a decade ago. And really that came out of a concept to manage congestion management. What's being proposed is invasive, cumbersome, clumsy, and expensive. And it's going down the wrong rabbit hole. There's a much simpler model. It's what we've been doing for the past century, and that's point of sale, collection. And we're well set up to do that. For example, Clark PUD is offering a significant subsidy for chargers installed in your home if they are internet connected. And really, it's not the state's business. People are going to resent having to send in pictures of their odometer every month, when really it's a function of physics. The heavier a vehicle, the more energy you use, the more wear and tear. And we can establish direct equivalence between the amount of road usage charge is collected from an internal combustion vehicle to go a mile as with an EV. So I think this really deserves an open forum discussion, and I would respectfully request an opportunity to speak to the commission or to have another webinar available to discuss a lot of these points at length.
Thank you, Gordon. We'll make sure that happens.
Thank you.
All right, Adam.
Thanks, John. This is Adam Fiss from RTC. My comment is just about the opportunity mentioned earlier around transitioning to a mileage tax. I just wanted to recognize some of the great work that local agencies contributed towards developing the ODOT toll programs equity framework. That was a collaborative effort, and it really recognized past land use and transportation investments in the Portland metro region, but I think that characterizes some of the development across Washington as well, and how it's resulted in negative impacts disproportionately affecting Black, Indigenous, people of color, people experiencing low income or economic hardships, and fostering tools that can help support them. And so I think that some of that work coming out of the Portland metro region to the south of us, but still very much including our region, could be really important in future conversations around a mileage tax.
Thank you, Adam.
John, I have a few comments in the chat I'd love to share.
Yes, please.
From Song and Bill. So Song did just want to mention that they've heard that there are toll roads on the rise in urban areas like New York, which I know we've all heard of, and kind of in talking about the EVs on the roads and just the weight of them, also thinking about the safety for pedestrians related to electric vehicles. And then Song shared that electric vehicles do weigh at least 30% more, and the cost of tires will also go up as the wear and tear on the roads are impacted with the weight. And then the efficiency of electric vehicles cannot be understated. It is just that the battery technology is not there yet. Song, if you want to add anything extra, but those comments have been added to the notes.
Yeah, I think these are great comments. Please feel free to keep adding notes to the chat for the next few minutes. You can also, we'll keep this Menti poll open if you want to add other opportunities. I would just mention also just quickly that yes, there's so many different ways of creating potential revenue generating transportation solutions. New York's looking at congestion pricing as, kind of like toll roads, right? Entering into the city, toll roads have been around for a number of years throughout the country. Other jurisdictions are looking at congestion pricing. And what the commission's been looking at is really a solution to go to that mileage-based user fee to move away from the gas tax, given that will be futile in the future. So definitely it needs more conversation, and we really appreciate everyone's comments on those options. I'm going to move on to a few wrap-up slides, and if you have been, if you'd like to provide any updates about what your region is doing, any planning studies or projects that you want to share with the group, please think about those. I know we have an update from the WashDOT's intercity bus.
Jonathan, you cut out a little.
Jonathan cut out.
You can go to.
There we go. Hi, John. You're cutting in and out. Paula, I'll hand it over to you. I think while John rejoins us.
Am I back?
Yes, you are.
It's fun. I apologize, everyone. It's funny because it says my internet is stable, like unstable, right when I come back, so it doesn't give me that. I suppose that's the nature of it. So just really quickly, these are the next steps for the Washington Transportation Plan. We have 3 more meetings, regional meetings. You can go to the commission site and register for those meetings if you'd like to attend another one. There are 2 next week, and then one 2 weeks from now. We'll be working to summarize what we've heard today and at the other meetings, and really trying to coalesce around some of the key priorities and develop potential strategies to address those priorities. We mentioned topic focus meetings, which are likely to happen later this summer, and hopefully will focus around those policy pillars and some of the ideas that we have around strategies to address the pillars as well as what we've heard today. So with that, I mentioned, but I was probably offline at the time. If you have other updates, anyone want to come on and share an update about a project that you have underway? I know we've got the WashDOT intercity bus team on a few slides, but anyone else want to share an update on something you've been working on that's worth sharing with the group? Okay, so looks like we have a couple updates from let's go Bill, Lori, and then Mayor Stevie, and then we've got the WashDOT project team. Yes, Bill?
I was just going to throw out there a couple things regarding the Lewis and Clark Bridge, and that's the bridge connecting Oregon and Washington between Rainier and Longview area. Some of you may have seen New York Times article after the collapse of the bridge in Baltimore that highlighted the Lewis and Clark Bridge. For those of you that don't know, it's 96 years old, built for much smaller trucks and less traffic than it's carrying today. It's a T1 freight corridor, so major truck traffic on it 7 days a week. We have been working on concept of replacing it at the COG here for 25, 30 years now. And we're about the same place we were 25 years ago. We're also now starting to look at safety issues related to the piers going into the water and runaway ships. And so there are a variety of issues, and I think Senator Wilson will be pushing legislation this next year to look at all bridges in Washington and their safety as far as runaway barges and ships. And just thought I'd share that with everyone. And in my region, Southwest Washington region, outside of Clark County, we have two major bridges, the Megler Bridge and the Lewis and Clark Bridge. So we've got fairly significant traffic going over both of those. The other thing I was going to mention, and I think I kind of mentioned it earlier, but just I-5 is a critical issue for us through our region, and finding ways to improve parallel routes and having emergency access in case of a major event on I-5 throughout the two counties I have that have I-5 going through it. We have several problem areas, and I know this probably isn't the right forum for this discussion, but we have several problem areas where if there's an accident or a slide in the wrong place, people aren't just going to get through. They just aren't going to get through, and they're going to have long waits and or roundabout ways to get north or south as needed. So I'll stop there, and I don't have the answers totally, but it's one of those things we're working on.
Thank you, Bill. And I hope that we can return in phase 2 of our outreach to discuss resilience in your region.
Thanks, Bill. Let's go to Lori and then Mayor Stevie again.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Laura Lebowski-Young with WashDOT Southwest Region. Just want to report quickly on 2 complete streets projects in Southwest Region. The first you'll be hearing more about soon is SR 504th Plain. We're getting the task order opened up for that project. We will have WSP, citizen engineers, and JLA working on that project. Also wanted to mention SR 141 Benjamin to White Salmon. We have a draft existing conditions report, and we just received cross sections for review as part of the alternatives development process. And then a few weeks ago, you all participated in our first stakeholders meeting. Finally, I want to give an update on personnel. Really excited to report that we hired a deputy planning director. His name is Gary Albrecht, and he comes to us from Clark County Community Planning, and he'll be joining us next week, and we're really excited about that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Mayor Stevie?
Yeah, so I'll give you an update on ours. We have a huge one for Washougal. So Senator Cantwell had a railroad elimination bill out there. We got funding. Pete Buttigieg came out, Secretary of Transportation, $40.4 million. We have a BNSF line, most busiest in the state. So we're going to do a underpass. And the problem is when the trains come by, our traffic backs up into SR 14 into the roundabout and safety issues and all that. So we're really excited about that. We're moving forward. We're doing all the planning, working on how we're going to build this thing, taking our bids. But we were just back in DC a couple months ago. We're tracking with all this, so we're pretty excited. Somebody brought this up earlier, but there's definitely a funding gap. We got 40.4 million from the feds. We probably got another 10 from the state, but looks like it's going to be about another $20 million just because of, you know, the economy and what's going on. So we're trying to fill that funding gap, but hey, we're rocking forward on that. Pretty excited.
Great to hear. Well, I really appreciate everyone providing those updates. This really kind of brings it home. So I know we have someone on from the WashDOT intercity bus plan just to present 2 quick slides, opportunities to contribute to that project. So do we have, is it Patrick or Nina today?
It's Patrick today. Yeah, I'll make it quick. So thanks, John, and everyone on the call. Just quick update on the WashDOT intercity bus plan update. The intercity bus plan is essentially a plan that is a rural transit plan, and we're, you know, understanding the connections between communities and the services that are serving those connections, and creating a plan to understand the needs and potential improvements to the intercity bus program. So we've just kicked off the project. There's going to be a significant stakeholder and public outreach component. And so we'll be coming back out to this group here kind of later in the spring. But this is just to give you like awareness that this project has kicked off. Well, basically, we hope to have it complete by the end of the year to have the plan updated. Next slide, John, I think is there a next slide? Or this, yeah. So next steps, I mean, we're like I said, we're at the beginning. There will be different ways to participate in this plan, both kind of virtually and in some in-person events as well. So I won't go through all of this, but we'll be coming back out to this group. And so if there are questions, I think we'll have a project website as well. I don't know if it's up right now, but we'll get that link out to folks once it is up. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Patrick. That's a super important project.
Well, I lost my internet cut out right when I was when Patrick was talking. So let me get to the next step slides really quickly.
It's totally okay, Jonathan. You know, just the last time this WTP was updated, we certainly didn't have this ability to sit together like this. And so some good things have come of it. And
Yeah.
we did not all drive to see you. I definitely wanted to thank RTC's Executive Director, Matt Ransom, and his team again for pulling this together and giving this opportunity. And Jonathan's got the slide here for us. If you need to reach us on any additional comments or questions, please do. We would love to hear your feedback. Thank you all for taking time today. Any closing comments, John? Are you still with me? You appear muted. Yes, I think he's in and out. In any case, thank you all for taking this time with us. It was a great discussion today. Really appreciate it. And we'll be back.
Thank you all so much for your time. Have a
Thank you
great
so much, everyone.